Millionaire's cruel intent to humiliate a cleaner is exposed. You won't believe her amazing transformation. Clara kept her gaze fixed on the gleaming marble floor beneath her worn-out sneakers. She scrubbed at a stubborn stain, the rhythmic motion almost meditative, but the laughter echoing from the adjoining room pierced her focus. The Martinez family was hosting a charity event, one of their ostentatious affairs designed to dazzle the high society of New Orleans. Behind her, the grand staircase curved elegantly, betraying the scene unfolding just beyond her reach. With every laugh that carried through the wood-paneled walls, Clara felt the familiar knot tighten in her stomach, her self-worth tangled in the web of Rosa's scorn. "Can you believe she's wearing those shoes?" Rosa's voice, dripping with mockery, slithered through the air. Clara's face flushed. It wasn't just the shoes. It was everything. The taunts masked in casual comments twisted like a knife. Every day, her meager paycheck, her humble job, and her struggle to teach Lucas the value of hard work were belittled in the glare of wealth. She inhaled slowly, grounding herself. Determined not to let their laughter break her, she reminded herself of her purpose. Lucas needed to see strength in humility. Yet beneath that calm facade, a storm brewed. How could she continue sharing lessons of integrity when her dignity felt so consistently stripped away? Doubt whispered maliciously in her mind. Was she setting a poor example? The thought festered, and Clara wrestled with the pressure. What if he doesn't understand? The fear loomed large, suggesting that she was forging a path riddled with disillusionment, not hope. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Clara worked, she began to feel an unwelcome heaviness settle over her chest. Today felt different. The discovery of that box in the attic had ignited feelings from her past, a swirling cocktail of loss and anger. Her father's brilliance, snatched away like a thief in the night, seemed to mock her from the shadows. If only he were here to guide her. What was the point in striving for dignity when Rosa had stripped her family of their very legacy? Torn between shouldering her father's memory and shielding Lucas from the weight of this knowledge, Clara's heartbeat quickened. She faced a world that seemed intent on ruining everything she treasured. She couldn't allow Rosa, a woman who thrived on belittling others, to rob her of more than she had already lost. But the urgency of the impending exhibition pressed down on her, the reality that her path to reclaiming her father's legacy could hinge on sacrificing her son's comfort. Would confronting Rosa endanger Lucas, or ignite a fire of defiance within him? Clara's jaw clenched as the room spun around her. She weighed the risk. Would standing against the woman who had done her family such harm protect her son, or jeopardize everything? The clock was ticking, moments fading as the weight of a decision loomed. Her dignity, her father's legacy, and her son's future all teetered on the brink. Time slipped through her fingers like sand, leaving behind only a desperate lust for justice. As she braced herself, Clara glanced toward the door, feeling the tension pulse through her body. A moment where everything she held dear teetered on the edge of revelation. Assuredly, the path ahead would either empower her or push her towards the brink of despair, leaving this chapter steeped in unresolved anguish. Clara's breath quickened as she stood motionless, wrestling with the doubts swirling in her mind. Would calling Rosa out at that moment tether her more tightly to the past she so desperately wished to escape, or set her free from its chains? She could still hear the distant laughter, a mocking reminder of her place in this world. Anger coursed through her veins. It wasn't merely about the shoes or the job. It was about respect, dignity, and reclaiming her family's legacy. Shaking off the weight of inertia, Clara turned back to her task, but her mind wandered to the stories tucked away in that attic box. The faded photographs of her father, the man who had taught her integrity, the importance of standing tall against adversity. Memories cascaded over her like a warm blanket, contrasting starkly with the coldness of Rosa's scorn. Clara had spent years trying to protect Lucas from the struggles she faced, believing that if she shielded him from her reality, he would be insulated from the pain it brought. Yet she now wondered if this was truly the best lesson she could impart. The stains on the floor suddenly felt like deeper metaphors for her own life. Sooner or later, they all had to be confronted. There was a part of her that yearned for the confrontation, and it surprised her. Was she finally ready to unleash the fire inside of her? Today felt pivotal. After a moment of deliberation, Clara raised her head, gripping the scrub brush tightly. In that instant, she decided. She wouldn't let Rosa dictate her worth any longer. She was not merely a cleaner. She was a mother, a daughter, a guardian of her family's legacy. With renewed energy, Clara focused on her work, channeling her frustration into each stroke of the brush. The relentless scrubbing became a metaphor for her resolve to cleanse her life of the negative influences that had seeped in uninvited. She glanced towards the polished staircase and imagined climbing it, not just in this house but in life, ascending towards her ambitions and her dignity. The laughter continued, riffling through her thoughts, but Clara chose to tune it out. She envisioned confronting Rosa, not with impulsive words fueled by rage, but with clarity and purpose. She imagined walking towards her, steady and composed. Tomorrow, she would confront Rosa. It would be at the charity event, a place where Rosa feasted on her power in front of others. But this time Clara wouldn't be invisible. She vowed to step into the light, to stand strong, reminding herself that the legacy of her father lived on through her tenacity. The fear of backlash flickered in her mind, but it only strengthened her resolve. As the night wore on, Clara mulled over her approach. As she stood in the kitchen, she heard a soft voice behind her. It was Lucas, his small hands clutching the doorway. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked, concern pooling in his eyes. Clara turned, heart swelling at the sincerity in his voice. "I will be," she assured him. "And I need you to trust me." Lucas nodded, and Clara knew she was no longer alone. Together, they would face whatever was to come. This confrontation was not just for her. It was for him, too. With the night darkening outside, a sense of anticipation blew through Clara's veins. The time had come to reclaim her narrative, but what would be required of her? Would the courage she summoned be enough to dismantle Rosa's cruel facade? As sleep beckoned, Clara envisioned the interplay of power as critical. The moment for clarity was approaching rapidly, and she had reached a fork in the road. Would she choose to confront Rosa directly, or seek a different path toward redemption? In the quiet of the night, she realized that the answer lay in her willingness to embrace the weight of her past and wield it as a sword, not a shield. Tomorrow would be transformative, but it would demand everything. Clara closed her eyes, bracing for the clash ahead, unaware that she would uncover far more than a mere confrontation. She was on the brink of discovering her own formidable power. The morning sun spilled through the kitchen window, casting golden patches on the aged wooden table where Clara and Lucas shared breakfast. Today felt different, not just because a confrontation loomed on the horizon, but because Clara had chosen to fuel herself with purpose rather than dread. She prepared toast, her hands moving methodically, each slice a reminder of her determination to step into the light. As she buttered the bread, her mind replayed scenarios of the charity event. Each imagined encounter with Rosa, the glint of smug satisfaction in her eyes, the condescending tilt of her head, fueled an ember of resolve in Clara's belly. She took a deep breath, grounding herself in the reality that she would no longer be a dot in Rosa's chaotic tapestry of manipulation. "Lucas," she said, her voice steady, "what do you think is more important, doing what's easy or doing what's right?" His eyes widened, as they often did when she posed a question aimed to provoke thought. "Doing what's right, I guess. But sometimes that's scary," he replied, tentative. Clara nodded, a surge of pride swelling within her. "It is." She placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "But fear can also be a compass that leads you to truth." They finished breakfast, and Clara felt a sense of grounded clarity. The thought of confronting Rosa still buzzed in her mind, but beneath the initial anxiety, something deeper pulsed, a mixture of anticipation and liberation. Later, as she prepared herself for the event, Clara chose her outfit with intention, a tailored dress that spoke of professionalism and elegance, each thread woven from her aspirations. Standing before the mirror, she practiced her stance, raising her chin slightly, imagining herself exuding confidence. Stepping into the venue, Clara felt jolts of energy around her as laughter and chatter filled the expansive hall. Each smile exchanged sharpened her focus, a reminder that vulnerability had its place alongside strength. She could easily slip into the background as she had done so many times before, but today was different. Tethered to her aspiration, she was determined to stand her ground. Rosa appeared not long after, flanked by her cronies who lavished her with attention. Clara's pulse quickened at the sight. She hated that the other woman's laughter still cut through her armor, but she stood firm. This was her moment to confront the shadows. As she approached, the air felt charged, as if the room had inhaled sharply in preparation. Clara locked eyes with Rosa, whose demeanor shifted from theatrical enjoyment to cool indifference. "Clara!" Rosa greeted, her voice oozing false warmth. "How nice to see you in this fancy setting. I hope you're not too uncomfortable among all the success." A tidal wave of instinct urged Clara to recoil, but she pushed it back. "Actually, I feel quite at home, Rosa. Thank you for noticing." Each word was deliberate, layered with conviction. Rosa's smile faltered slightly before regaining its facade. "How charming. But you know, I prefer to surround myself with those who understand their place, don't you?" The snickering laughter from the crowd echoed, stinging Clara deeply. Yet, she held her ground, her father's values suffusing her strength. "And I prefer to surround myself with those who respect others," she shot back, her voice steady, though her heart raced. A ripple of surprise coursed through the room. Eyes shifted from Clara to Rosa, the shift in tension palpable. Was this what reclaiming her narrative felt like? Each word was a shovel digging into the soil of Rosa's carefully constructed persona, exposing her for what she truly was, and drawing the line for respect. Clara was finally digging in, no longer just a cleaner waiting for life to shift. She was a force demanding to be seen. Clara felt exhilaration mixed with fear, realizing she had crossed an invisible threshold. The laughter that once felt like ridicule now transformed into something else. Something powerful, supportive. But as Rosa's expression darkened, Clara braced herself. This was only the beginning. Each moment was a negotiation of her identity, and though she had taken the initial step, the battle was far from over. Would Rosa retaliate? Clara felt the rising tide beneath her own determination as the crowd hovered on the brink of a spectacle. And just then, Rosa leaned closer, a menacing glimmer in her eye. "This might be amusing, Clara, but remember, the game isn't over yet." The promise of confrontation loomed ahead, and Clara sensed that the real fight, one involving not just respect, but the ultimate confrontation of their lives, had only just begun. Would she have the strength to face whatever Rosa unleashed next? Clara felt her heart race as Rosa's words hung in the air like a fog threatening to engulf her. The laughter that had once provided support now felt like shards of glass digging into her resolve. In that electrifying moment, she understood that confrontation was not just a battle against Rosa, but a reckoning with the self-doubt that had long shadowed her life. Taking a steadier breath, Clara drew on the quiet strength she'd fostered over the years. You seem to enjoy this little performance, Rosa. But what's truly impressive is how often you rely on fear to keep others in check. Her words gained momentum, propelled by the adrenaline rushing through her veins. It was as if she were peeling layers away from her own identity, discovering a core she hadn't fully embraced until now. The crowd's ambivalent murmurs rippled through the hall, suggesting that Clara's voice had reached them. Voices that usually applauded Rosa's arrogance now hesitated, opening a chasm for solidarity. Clara felt the urge to command their attention transform into a palpable force, powering her conviction. It wasn't enough to expose Rosa. She needed to redefine her sense of worth. Rosa's eyes narrowed as if Clara had drawn back a veil. You think you've won some sort of moral victory here? This is merely a game of survival, darling. You should know your place in the hierarchy. Clara's chest tightened. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to retreat, but each of Rosa's taunts felt like an echo of her past failures. Clara had been a spectator, stepping aside for others' triumphs. The remnants of their shared history morphed into a foundation for her resolve. And you should understand that I'm done playing along. The only hierarchy that matters is how we treat each other, and I choose to reject yours. The room stilled, caught between disbelief and intrigue. Clara's heart raced with the thrill of defiance, yet she knew that every response Rosa calculated would be an attempt to claw back her power. A surge of clarity washed over Clara as Rosa's facade of superiority began cracking. The tension morphed, displacing fear with a flicker of hope. This wasn't merely about proving Rosa wrong. It was about anchoring herself in her own value. Clara, darling, Rosa sighed, feigning exasperation. You believe your words carry weight, but who are you to challenge me? Look around. People respect me. They follow my lead. No, Rosa, they fear you, Clara replied, heart pounding against her ribcage. There's a difference. With those words, Clara felt a strange empowerment wash over her. It wasn't bravado, nor was it a mask she wore. It was the truth of her experience, the weight of hard work and resilience manifesting itself in this very moment. She was not merely a cleaner. She was someone with dreams, navigation skills earned from adversity. And this time, she drew no boundaries around her worth. Yet the game was not over. She felt the fire of impending retaliation from Rosa, simmering beneath a thin veneer of civility. This confrontation ignited something deeper in Clara. Not just courage, but a nascent understanding that the heights of success were within reach if she confronted those who would keep her grounded. As the weight of their exchange hovered, a growing realization bloomed amid the tension. This was not just about surviving Rosa's challenges, but thriving despite them. Tell me, Clara. Rosa's veneer of aloofness cracked. How long do you think this newfound courage will last? The question lingered like a specter, but Clara only smiled, her voice ringing out with newfound clarity. As long as I breathe, I will be my own advocate. In that moment, Clara realized her evolution from an unseen figure to a protagonist of her own narrative. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. But even as relief washed over her, she sensed the real test still lay ahead, as Rosa's lips curled into a predatory smile. Let's see how far your bravery gets you, Rosa whispered just above an audible pitch, her eyes narrowing with determination. Clara felt a shiver course through her. The stakes had just grown higher, and a different kind of game was about to unfold. How would she navigate this uncharted territory, where every step could lead to an elevation or a downfall? Clara didn't have the answers yet, but she knew one thing. It was time to play her own game. Armored with resolve, she prepared for whatever lay ahead, aware that true strength would be forged in the crucible of challenge. Clara left the hall with a peculiar blend of exhilaration and trepidation swirling through her. The adrenaline that had surged during her confrontation with Rosa was beginning to ebb, replaced by a slow, creeping uncertainty. Every heartbeat across the crowded street reminded her of how unsteady her footing felt in this newfound role as an advocate for herself. It wasn't just that she had stood up to Rosa. It was how liberating it felt to step into her own power, however temporarily. Yet nagging doubts lurked just below the surface. What would be the cost of this defiance? Would Rosa retaliate with more than mere words? Clara's thoughts spiraled as she paced down her familiar side street, her mind wrestling with both the thrill of victory and the fear of defeat. Confrontations had rarely ended without consequences for her in the past. She remembered too vividly the isolation that had come with voicing her thoughts, past humiliations echoing with every step. As she turned the corner, her gaze fell upon a small community center where Saturday workshops and lessons already buzzed with potential. Spotting a flyer tucked in the glass pane of the door, Clara paused, mesmerized by the promise it offered. A public speaking workshop. The words, "Find your voice," danced before her eyes, tugging at the corners of her resolve. The workshop was designed to help individuals overcome the very self-doubt she confronted moments earlier. But the idea of being among strangers, of exposing her vulnerabilities to fresh eyes, felt terrifying. Could she really afford to take another leap of faith so soon after confronting Rosa? The lingering specter of failure loomed over her. What if she stumbled or froze? How many times had she shielded her heart and avoided pursuing paths of ambition because of fear? Clara's mind raced back to the confrontation. She had spoken with clarity. She had stirred a shift in the crowd. Each person in that room had a story, a struggle, perhaps similar to her own. The fear that shrouded their faces in that moment wasn't merely Rosa's influence. It reflected their own doubts, their own hesitations. If she could stand firm despite her fears, maybe this workshop could serve as another stepping stone towards her growth. A deeper belief began to burgeon within her. Clara wasn't powerless. She had been existing in the shadows of fear for so long. But now she felt the tingling awareness of her own potential. She pictured herself at the podium, addressing not only an audience but the part of herself that had always held back. Even amidst the doubts that swirled in her mind, a glimmer of hope ignited as she looked at the flyer again. This workshop was an opportunity, a key into an uncharted territory that she desperately wanted to explore, to broaden her horizons beyond mere survival. If she could confront Rosa, perhaps she could learn to articulate her thoughts and dreams with confidence. However, she was also aware that grappling with Rosa's retaliation loomed ahead, a battle to assert her newfound strength. Clara had to balance her eagerness for growth with the knowledge that Rosa would not remain idle. The stakes were higher than ever. Taking a deep breath, Clara steeled herself and made the decision that would shape her path. She would attend the workshop, learn to express herself with purpose, and transform her experiences into strength. But with every bold step forward came the fear of conflict with Rosa. The whisper of her name lingered like a ghost in her thoughts. As Clara walked away from the community center, her resolve began to crystallize. She would prepare herself for whatever challenge Rosa threw at her next. The question loomed large. How would she balance self-advocacy at the workshop while standing firm against Rosa's inevitable retaliation? Only time would tell, and she could feel her journey toward courage unfolding with every step she took. With her heart racing in anticipation, Clara was ready to embrace the challenge, knowing that the moment of truth loomed ahead, and the real confrontation was still on the horizon. Clara stood in front of the mirror, rehearsing the opening lines of her speech for the upcoming workshop. The reflection staring back at her seemed a stranger, eyes wide with determination, but a flicker of doubt lay just beneath the surface. Who was she to think she could capture an audience's attention? She inhaled deeply, steadying her nerves. Public speaking had never been a skill she mastered. She had always preferred the background, the safety of silence. Yet, that didn't align with the person she was striving to become. With Rosa's taunt still echoing in her ears, Clara felt a surge of defiance. She would not allow herself to be squashed by fear any longer. Each run-through in front of the mirror knocked against her trepidations like a hammer chiseling away at a block of stone. The memory of her confrontation with Rosa replayed through her mind. The encouragement from the crowd had fueled the fire within her. And yet, she was also aware of the ripples caused by that moment. What would Rosa unleash now that she had seen a spark of defiance from Clara? It filled Clara with a mix of concern and resolve as she mentally rehearsed various rebuttals, preparing for all possible scenarios. Arriving at the workshop felt different than she had imagined. The room was filled with an array of participants, from different backgrounds and walks of life, all holding the same flicker of vulnerability and determination she felt. Clara felt an unfamiliar warmth creep through her. Maybe she wasn't as alone as she often thought. Sitting at the back, she observed those around her, trying to knit together common threads of uncertainty and ambition. When the facilitator, a dynamic woman named Amelia, introduced herself, Clara felt the energy in the room shift. There was a palpable comfort radiating from Amelia, a reminder that vulnerability was not synonymous with weakness. Clara absorbed every word, reshaping her own narrative in the process. The workshop erupted with laughter and applause as participants voiced their fears. Each story revealed a shared humanity that slowly chipped away at Clara's own insecurities. Clara felt a sudden pang of envy for those who spoke, without the paralyzing grip of fear. When her turn finally came, her heart raced and her mouth felt dry. She opened her mouth but stumbled over her thoughts, grappling with the weight of her own expectations. She caught a glimpse of Amelia's encouraging smile, that beacon guiding her to push through. I want to share something, Clara managed, addressing the group. The room quieted, anticipation swirling with her nervousness. I stood up to someone who always made me feel small. In that instant, Clara spoke from the heart, the words pouring out. She shared her confrontation with Rosa, how it had shifted something deep within her. The bravery she felt gradually replaced her fear, and as she finished, an unexpected rush of applause enveloped her. For the first time, Clara recognized her own voice, raw and true. But as the applause faded, a familiar anxiety returned. What would happen when Rosa caught wind of her newfound confidence? Would she retaliate, revealing vulnerabilities Clara had just shared with a room full of supportive strangers? Clara's resolve began to fray at the edges as uncertainty gnawed at her. The workshop concluded with a group exercise, where participants collaborated to encourage one another. Clara was buoyed by the supportive energy that enveloped her, but remained acutely aware of the cloud looming in her periphery, Rosa's inevitable response. As she left the workshop, a mix of exhilaration and anxiety washed over her. The experience had ignited a flame of courage, but it also reminded her of the shadow of conflict that laid waiting. Returning home, Clara felt that the moment would come to confront Rosa again. But deeper than the potential clash was a promise she'd made to herself. She would not allow fear to dictate her life any longer. With that promise etched in her mind, she took one last look in the mirror before bed. Who would be the next Clara to emerge? With newfound determination, she silently vowed that whatever challenges awaited her, she would meet them head-on. And as her heart thundered with restless energy, she mused, what would Rosa do next? The confrontation was far from over, and the seriousness of that impending clash lurked with each thought she entertained. Clara awoke to the soft rush of morning light filtering through her curtains. The warmth was inviting, yet the weight of last night's realizations bore heavily upon her like an unwelcome cloak. She could feel anticipation and dread pulling at her in equal measure. Each moment felt like an opportunity to either thrive or shatter. A sizable shift had begun within her, but the specter of Rosa loomed larger, reminding Clara that change could be a double-edged sword. Her phone vibrated on the bedside table, jarring Clara from her spiraling thoughts. It was a message from Amelia, expressing how proud she was of Clara's courage at the workshop. Remember, Amelia had written, each step forward is a testament to the strength inside you. The compliment sent a tingle of warmth through Clara, reigniting that embers of her burgeoning confidence. Yet the message was quickly overshadowed by the fear of backlash. What would Rosa's next move be? Would she try to belittle Clara in front of their colleagues? She couldn't shake the doubts that crowded her mind, suffocating the motivational pulse from Amelia's words. Clara's instincts told her to brace for impact. After a hurried breakfast, she left for work, each step toward the office heavy with the weight of uncertainty. The familiar sounds of the bustling city felt more pronounced today, the honking cars, the chatter of pedestrians, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee teasing her senses. In a way, those sensations comforted her, reminding her she was part of a larger world, one that sometimes rewarded boldness, despite the risks. As Clara took her seat at the office, she sensed the undercurrent of anxiety, shared by everyone who saw Rosa as the queen bee. Their interactions, often laced with fear, created an invisible hierarchy that Clara had long accepted. But today, something gnawed at her, a belief that maybe she could contribute to changing that dynamic. The thought thrilled and terrified her. An email pinged in her inbox. Her heart raced as she opened it. It was a friendly colleague, inviting her to join a project team. Clara felt an inexplicable spark. It wasn't just the project that appealed to her, but the opportunity to collaborate, to speak up, to let herself be heard, away from the shadow of Rosa. Yet the trepidation gnawed at her. What if Rosa retaliated for these supposed acts of defiance? Clara couldn't erase the memory of how easily Rosa had crushed others for far less. The voice in her head began to swirl around doubts once more. Would this willingness to take a stand provoke a response? Could she maintain this newfound light while navigating the treacherous waters of workplace politics? Clara took a slow, deep breath and decided to accept the project invitation. It was time to plunge into the unknown and prove to herself that she was more than Rosa's punching bag. During the first project meeting, Clara amazed even herself with how assertively she participated. Ideas flowed from her lips as if previously restrained, now freed. Her team was surprised, some impressed, nodding and engaging with her insights. As the conversation flowed, she dared to catch the eye of each member, reclaiming ownership of her space in the room, a space that had long felt alien. Yet, as the session wrapped up, Clara saw Rosa entering the room. The mood shifted, like the stillness that signals a storm. Rosa's sharp gaze locked onto Clara, radiating a sense of impending confrontation that made the air crackle. The room's chatter faded as if on cue, the tension palpable. Clara could almost hear the echoed whispers she'd once feared. The shift was instantaneous. She felt a knot tightening in her stomach, anxiety clawing at her insides. Would Rosa unleash her wrath right there, in front of her peers? Clara squared her shoulders, realizing that this was not merely a moment to endure. It was a moment to shape her journey. The time had come to confront not just Rosa, but the remnants of the timid girl she used to be. As she prepared mentally to meet Rosa's challenge, a surge of determination flooded her. This might be the moment where she could reclaim her narrative. Would she finally rise against the storm? Or would she be swept away like before? Clara inhaled sharply, heart racing as she prepared to face the very confrontation she'd dreaded, and had, in fact, anticipated. Rosa approached with slow, deliberate steps, her smile a thin veneer concealing the tempest below. The world narrowed to that moment, the air thick with possibility and peril. Clara stood unwavering, ready to meet whatever challenge lay ahead. Because after all, the battle was not just with Rosa. It was for her own evolution. Would she have the courage to seize this moment? Or would fear wrap its tendrils around her heart once more? Rosa closed the distance between them, an unsettling smile etching her features. "Clara, darling," she began, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I see you've found your voice today. How refreshing." The words hung in the air, laced with accusation. Clara's pulse quickened. Was this an attempt to intimidate, or a mere challenge? The specter of fear threatened to snatch her breath away, yet she stood firm. "Thank you, Rosa. I think collaboration fosters creativity, don't you?" Her tone was steady, defying the tremor within. "That's what this project aims to achieve." Rosa tilted her head, scrutinizing Clara with an intensity that made the heat rise to her cheeks. Achieve indeed. But let's not forget who's actually capable of delivering results around here. The thinly veiled threat sent a shiver down Clara's spine. If she faltered, Rosa would feast on her insecurities like a ravenous wolf. To counter the pull of vulnerability, Clara summoned the positive energy from her colleagues' thoughtful nods earlier. It sparked something within her, a defiance she hadn't known she possessed. Each interaction in the meeting had slowly chipped away at the fortress of her self-doubt, brick by brick. I'm eager to see what everyone brings to the project, including you, Clara responded, planting her feet as she lifted her chin. The tension hung like a taut wire. She could almost hear the collective intake of breath around them. Rosa's eyes narrowed, her facade slipping for just a moment. Clara took that brief flicker as fuel. Would it be enough to ignite her defiance? What a committed little soldier, Rosa said, voice laced with mockery. But you know how quickly things can turn in our industry, Clara. Credibility is hard to build and easy to destroy. The room felt charged, witnesses to a duel of wills. Clara sensed the challenge, no longer merely survival, but an assertion of her place. Instead of retreating into the silence she once embraced, Clara leaned into Rosa's bravado. I believe in creating a supportive environment. That's essential for the success of a team. Her voice resonated louder than the rustling shadows of insecurity that had haunted her for years. With each word, clarity began to seep into the fray. Perhaps this wasn't just Rosa's moment to intimidate Clara. It was Clara's opportunity to redefine herself. Success didn't rest solely on reputation or past accolades. It hinged on her resilience and capability. Rosa's smile faltered, her confidence rattled by Clara's unexpected firmness. The realization swept over Clara. It was her turn at the table, and she had a right to claim it. The shifting allegiances in the room now favored those who dared to embrace their potential. With a surge of insight, Clara took a risk, inspiring herself to break the emotional shackles that had tethered her. I would love for us all to contribute to a brainstorming session soon. Having everyone's perspective will only make our project stronger, she suggested, her voice slicing through Rosa's lingering tension. The reaction was instantaneous. A ripple of support emanated from her colleagues, their engagement indicating a collective desire to see change. Clara's heart soared, the taste of empowerment intoxicating as whispers of affirmation met her ears. Rosa's expression hardened, an unsettling blend of fury and admiration. Clara watched as her rival processed the shift in dynamics, her grip on the room loosening as support for Clara flourished. With a final glance at Clara, Rosa pivoted, her heels clicking sharply against the floor, echoing into the silent room. Clara's breath escaped her in shaky bursts. She had stood her ground, but at what cost? As the meeting adjourned, Clara felt different. Not invincible, but resolute. A fierce determination burned within her, a belief that she could navigate this tumultuous terrain. She had not just survived a confrontation, she had emerged bearing the gift of clarity. Yet to sustain this shift, she needed to remain vigilant. Rosa wouldn't let it go easily. How would Clara prepare for what would come next? Fueled by a mix of exhilaration and fear, Clara recalled the project at hand. It was her chance to cultivate a new path. Yet would she be able to maintain her momentum against Rosa's retaliation? The very terrain she had begun to conquer could quickly become her battlefield again. As thoughts raced through her mind, Clara realized the stakes were higher than she had anticipated. Maybe this was only the beginning of a much larger confrontation, one that would test her resolve like never before. With the uncertainty of what lay ahead, a single question loomed. Was she truly ready to face the challenges that would inevitably follow? Clara leaned against her desk, grappling with the charged atmosphere that Rosa had left in her wake. The echoes of their confrontation swirled around her, potent reminders of both vulnerability and newfound strength. Brief moments of exhilaration gave way to a gnawing uncertainty. Clara tapped her fingers against the wood, contemplating her next move. This wasn't just about surviving the corporate grind. It was about thriving, transforming. In the days following that pivotal meeting, Clara committed herself to preparation. She scheduled brainstorming sessions, inviting every team member to contribute ideas freely. Each session became a platform for diverse voices. Ideas were nurtured, contributing to a shared goal that ultimately ignited the flicker of enthusiasm she'd always hoped existed in her colleagues. As collaboration blossomed, Clara's confidence grew. Yet as Rosa continued to circle like a hawk, Clara found herself more vigilant. The tension was palpable. It seeped into every interaction. Each encounter with Rosa dripped with a mix of scrutiny and disdain. But the fear of the haunting past no longer paralyzed her. It fueled her resolve. She began to analyze the dynamics around her, dissecting interactions with a sharper eye. Clara learned to observe not only Rosa, but also the responses of her peers, some inspired, some fearful, executing a complex social dance she had neglected to notice before. One afternoon, she overheard Rosa confiding in colleagues, casting doubt on Clara's competence. Instead of crumbling, Clara felt a wave of defiance. She mustered her courage and approached Rosa's associates later that day. Engaging them in conversation, Clara reframed the narrative with wit and sincerity. "I believe collaboration is the backbone of innovation. Have you noticed how much more we accomplish when we work together?" As she spoke, Clara felt her own voice gain momentum. It became a tool of persuasion, grounding her authority among her peers. Yet, as plans solidified for the project, a pressing decision loomed. An unexpected opportunity arose for a pivotal presentation in front of the board, an event Rosa had quietly assumed would be her stage. Clara steeled herself for the challenge, recognizing that this moment could redefine her trajectory. In her mind, she framed the presentation as not just an opportunity to validate her outputs, but a test to reclaim her narrative. As she meticulously prepared her slides, Clara discovered unexpected talents within herself. Her ability to connect complex ideas and communicate them effectively, to craft visuals that wouldn't just inform, but inspire. Hours turned to days as she honed her skills, each late night spent igniting a flicker of resilience. Finally, the day arrived. The conference room buzzed with the murmurs of attendants and board members shuffling in. Clara took a deep breath, her heart thrumming against her ribcage. The atmosphere felt electric. She could almost hear it crackle. When her moment came, she stood before the board, feeling the weight of their gazes. Clara opened with a bold statement, weaving through her research and findings with vigor. The room transformed. It was no longer a space of intimidation, but one of shared ideas and aspirations. Clara engaged the audience, eliciting questions that drew them into her vision. Yet, amid the applause and affirmations, Clara caught sight of Rosa's seething expression pinned against the back wall. The tension snapped with sudden awareness. This was a competition that had transcended the project. It was a struggle for credibility, identity, and power. What would Rosa retaliate with after this? Would the stakes escalate beyond professional discontent? As the applause faded, with Clara feeling victorious yet nervous, she couldn't shake the anxiety that tightened her chest. She had soared, but the feeling of impending turbulence lingered. Would Rosa quietly bow out, or would she strike back with a vengeance? The moment had come to confront the true cost of her ascent. Clara needed to prepare herself for the collateral damage of her bold steps. She realized it was time to gather her allies and fortify her stance, readying them for the inevitable showdown. In that moment of clarity, Clara recognized her path was not only about proving her worth, but about assembling a coalition of resilience. The budding friendships within her team were the lifelines she would need. As she basked in the possibility of change, a deeper question ignited. How would she rally her team against the unpredictable storm Rosa was bound to unleash? Clara stood before the mirror. The reflection that gazed back at her was one she barely recognized. She had evolved remarkably over the past few weeks. The timid woman who once allowed Rosa to dictate her worth had transformed into a remarkable force, a strong advocate for her own narrative, and that of her team. The upcoming board presentation was no longer something to dread, but rather an opportunity to showcase the strength she'd cultivated. She had a mission now, one that encompassed not just her growth but the collective potential of her team. Clara felt a gentle swell of confidence. She had worked hard to build relationships with her colleagues, cultivating a collaborative spirit that enabled innovative ideas to flourish, and today's presentation would be a testament to their hard work. Yet there was still that nagging fear about Rosa's possible retaliation. As she arrived at the conference room, Clara absorbed the buzz of the crowd, her heart pounding with anticipation. The room filled with faces, some supportive, some apprehensive, and she knew she was under scrutiny. Rosa's presence had morphed from a source of intimidation to a challenge to overcome. Each passing week had solidified Clara's resolve to turn fear into determination. When Clara's moment arrived, she stepped forward, her newly tailored suit pressed against her frame like an armor of self-assurance. She delivered her presentation with clarity and purpose, weaving together statistics, stories, and visuals that showcased not only the accomplishments of her project, but the collaborative effort of her team. Clara spoke with conviction, engaging the audience by highlighting the value of working together, contrasting sharply with Rosa's notorious game of separation and fear. The room responded positively, nods of approval circulating like ripples. Clara felt a burst of energy coursing through her, each question posed by the board members giving her more strength to project her narratives of success. Just as she finished, a strong round of applause erupted, and for the first time, Clara experienced the profound thrill of being appreciated, not as an invisible worker, but as a commendable contributor. In that moment, it became clear. Clara had not only reclaimed her voice but demonstrated her competence beyond doubt. The remnants of her life, once overrun by Rosa's disdain, began to fade into an insignificance she couldn't recognize anymore. As the applause subsided, Clara caught Rosa's sharp glare across the room, and an unexpected wave of calm washed over her. This moment was not merely about defeating Rosa. It was about redefining success itself by standing unflinchingly in her truth. Later, as she exited the conference room amidst congratulations from colleagues, Clara felt lighter than ever. The shadow of fear that had loomed for so long was finally dwindling. She had emerged not just victorious in this confrontation, but transformed. Each challenge she had faced had been a stepping stone leading her to clearer confidence. And yet, resilient as she was, Clara understood that Rosa's response was imminent. The battle for a new equilibrium was just beginning. She embraced this knowledge, feeling empowered to rally her team, not just for professional reasons, but for their shared journey of growth. She scheduled a casual meeting to celebrate their success, a moment to reinforce the bonds that had helped her rise. It was during this gathering that Clara noticed a shift in her colleagues. They were no longer hesitant to share their ideas, their voices layered with respect, admiration, and solidarity. Clara had achieved not just personal growth, but unfolded a space where others felt valued and empowered. At the end of the meeting, Clara stood in front of her team, a familiar warmth radiating through her. "Thank you all for your hard work and support. We've created something special together, and I'm excited to continue this journey with each of you." Their cheers enveloped her, and she felt a sense of belonging that had long eluded her. Despite the unknowns ahead, Clara knew she was prepared for whatever storm Rosa would bring. She was grounded not only in her accomplishments, but in the relationships she had built. The true victory was the legacy she had begun to create, not just for herself, but for every individual within her team. As she made her way home, Clara could feel the vibrant pulse of excitement for the future. She understood the journey wasn't finished, but for the first time, she stepped forward, not just as a cleaner, but as a confident leader brimming with potential. She was committed to dismantling the facade of fear and limitation that had long dictated her story. Her path was hers to steer, and with each new day, she would forge ahead with unwavering courage. Now, hear this. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, because it genuinely makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below. I want to know what you think. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion.